Hi, Nora. Once again, just such a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend time with your creative work, with your poems. Um, I thought the two different the two different poems you wrote this week were so different from one another. This is what I'm trying to say, and it was exciting to see sort of the breadth of what you're willing to what you're willing to attempt, and that's really exciting to me that you're willing to try such a variety of form and of content. So first of all, let's start with the first poem. Um, Cafe Passe, which is one of my favorite places to write, in fact, in town. So we've probably seen each other there before. Um, so I think I was glad that you included the list of images that you recorded, and then glad to see how it shifted into more creative work. I will say, as I was reading this poem, I want to say one, two, three, five, about 5 lines in, I think that's where the poem started for me, where you hooked me, where you had my interest, you had my attention. So I'm just going to read the first few lines back to you. I sit here upon a wobbling chair, feet planted upon the ground, back supported slightly wrong, as though this chair meant for children. This table dropped down just too far. I resort and resettle, always a tad uncomfortable within this skin, face forward, never back. So, right around this chair meant for children is when you grabbed my attention. And I've noticed a lot of times, I don't know if you've experienced this before too, but when I sit down to write a poem, the first few lines wind up being the padding, right? It like takes me a minute to catch my groove. And I think that's what's happening here for you. So if you agree or if you want to play around with this suggestion, my suggestion would be to cut the first few lines. Ask yourself, where does this really start? Where does this poem really start? And start there. And then, once again, I would keep an eye on repetition in your work and make sure that if you're repeating a word, it's very intentional. So within the first few lines of this poem, you repeat upon twice. Upon a wobbling chair, upon the ground. And so my question is that an intentional decision? And reread your poem with an ear for repeated words to question that. I think if you did that with this poem, you would tighten it up, and I think that you would find that there's some extra words that you might want to get rid of. Okay. I like that it's long. Let me look at your questions. Do you feel that the limited narration and liminal spaces to be sufficient to get across the intended meaning, or do you feel I should expand those lines? I mean, I think I got your intended meaning, but it might be helpful if you're phrasing a question in the future to say like, "Hey, this is what I was intending. Did it work for you?" So that for myself and the students, rather than guess at your meaning, we're able to say, "Oh, okay, this is what Nora was working towards. Was that successful or unsuccessful for me as a reader?" I do not feel that um, the topic ending on isolation is somehow depressing. I feel like so much creative work, can be depressing, or can think about isolation, explores how isolated we are. It's the human condition, right? So I don't have a problem whatsoever about you ending the poem with a feeling of isolation. I thought your trace poem was fantastic. I just love what you do with this. I really, really love what you did with the form, what you did with the mapping of Tennyson's original poem. I also I thought it was really funny that you brought up the appropriateness for 7 or 8 year olds to read a poem about war, right? Yeah, I think sometimes we're a little oblivious to what we're exposing our youth to in a classroom. But so cool that you still remembered this poem from that time in your life and then being exposed to it again in high school. And I really love, I think my favorite thing about it is that you changed it to the entire planet population rather than a particular army, which just gives me such a sense of community. Like we're all in this together, is what I walked away from this feeling. So, really nice work. Thanks so much.